This morning, my heart channel feels wide open with a particular transmission, which is needing to be offered. And that transmission, that translation, transliteration, is here to say that if you do not cultivate a regular practice to dive into the depths of your body, of your mind, of your soul, and to face the shadows that constitute a portion of your being, a portion of some of the patterns that have enmeshed themselves into the structure of your embodied being here and now. If you do not face your shadows, your inner demons, if you do not shine the light of your awareness upon them, then the possibility remains not only open, but almost certain that they will take the reins of your unconscious and thus of your life. And in turn, generate through your own will the very evils which you so deeply wish to avoid, which you so deeply wish to separate yourself from. Now, what exactly do I mean by this? In some sense, Carl Jung has already established all of this. This is just his idea of shadow work, of going into the psyche and facing the shadow, which is simultaneously your individual shadow of your own psyche and consciousness, as well as an embodiment of the collective shadow. And these things are interwoven in the intersection between microcosm and macrocosm, to where any time that I am speaking of the individual shadow, I also recognize it as an embodiment of the collective shadow, just as well as the collective shadow is itself a rippling embodiment of the individual shadow. Now, one of the deepest conflicts in all of human existence, one of the deepest philosophical questions, one of the deepest dragons which we must face, is the presence of evil on this earth, of the existence of forms of being, whether they are in individual particular forms of behavior or in systemic or systematic like forms of being which are just so clearly detached from the pure and innate goodness of the world. I think of individuals who steal from one another, who kill one another, who lie to one another, who deceive one another, who are rooted in deceit. And I think of collective machinations of similar kinds of deceit, such as our food systems that are filled with complete poison, such as like you go to a gas station and, or I say you, but I mean me, like if I'm in a gas station, oftentimes I feel like, oh yeah, this entire system is siphoning the earth, is siphoning the feminine essence of the earth and is feeding upon the earth in a way that is so deeply out of balance with the way that the earth sustains herself and sustains life and sustains the self-sovereign systems of just pure, free, innate abundance. And you think of war, and you think of trafficking, and you think of all of the children that are being tormented in such a variety of ways, which I do not necessarily wish to name in this moment, because we all know that it's happening. And you think of, back to the food system, of the billions of animals whose blood is flowing freely into our soils. And yeah. Blood does not belong in soils. Water belongs in the soil. Thinking of the evils and the atrocities that are present on this earth. And we all know what they are. We all know it's here. We all feel that there's something completely out of place. There's something unacceptable happening here. This is not the normal condition of humanity, of the earth, of the universe, of God, of sentience, of love. This is not how things are supposed to be. And yet this is how they are. And in some sense, the divine universal will has allowed it to happen. This is such a large and complex thought, transmission, energy, which I'm trying to translate. So I'll take it one step at a time. I just spoke of the divine universal will that allows for these evils to happen. I also just spoke about Carl Jung and the shadow and my terms. These aren't my terms, but the terms that I currently use of the microcosm and the macrocosm, of your microcosmic shadow, your particularly individual form of the shadow, and the collective ripples, macrocosmic, of that shadow, and how these are in some sense self-same and interwoven. Divine universal will and individual free will are microcosmically, macrocosmically enmeshed. We are the divine universal will, microcosmically embodied as the infinite universe in our individual forms. And so when I say that the divine universal will has allowed for this evil to happen, what I am also saying is that individual microcosmic instantiations of that will have allowed within each of their individual lives, and the ripples and their intersections with other individual lives have allowed these shadows to run rampant, such that we find ourselves in this collective projection of absolute misalignment with the truth of our own divinity. And thus I return to the first idea which I expressed, which is, if you do not go inside of yourself on behalf of your individual manifestation of the divine universal will of God, if you do not go inside of yourself on behalf of that will and face the darkness that you have inherited from the ancestral past, from your very recent past, from your enmeshment with the collective delusion of society and its machinations, which are founded upon delusion and ignorance and thus evil. Traumatic wounds, whether they are from your life or from other lives or from things that have been imposed upon you. Programming from the mass technocracy, which is literally like designing systems to try to program us to dissolve our own power and to fall into victimhood to the evils which they and we create for ourselves in this society. Those 5 and many other elements are energies which are present within your body, and they take the form of these darknesses, these imbalances within your body, these tensions, these places where the natural flowing of source energy, of pure divine harmonious love, which is fundamentally all, where that flow is not as seamless, it's not as fluid, and it's there's something preventing, there's a blockage, there's like a dam, and it's like a dam that prevents the flow of water, but it is also a dam, and it's some kind of damnation. It's a curse that is imposed upon the integrity of the microcosmic body as well as the macrocosmic body of the earth, the universe, and beyond. All of these things are completely interrelated, are self-same within the energetic spiral that constitutes and contains them. As a microcosmic embodiment of the divine universal consciousness, the divine universal will, as a breath of God breathed into being, made in His image, you and I possess within ourselves, contain within ourselves, hold within ourselves the light of this consciousness and of this awareness, such that we can enter into these places within ourselves where something which may be called darkness, where something which may be called shadow, where something which may be called the potentiality of us committing evils and deceit upon ourselves and upon others, and thus rippling into a collective delusion of evil in the world, such that evil can exist, such that atrocities can continue to persist in our world. We possess the ability to go inside of ourselves, inside of the microcosmic terrain of our bodies, and through perceiving it with the eyes of our hearts undefiled, with our hearts and minds and souls aligned with the absolute divinity which has been bestowed upon us, which has been given to us, and the responsibility that comes with that. We look into the eyes of those shadows and the egregores that they take form as. We look into the eyes of our inner demons. They may very well present themselves as demons. In a literal, metaphorical, energetic, spiritual sense, in whatever form that needs to present itself, so that we shine the loving light of awareness upon the place where the ignorance and the deceit have created some kind of imbalance and blockage. And by shining that luminous, loving awareness of just pure knowing, consciousness, saying, I see you, I witness you for what you are. We shine this light upon this shadow, upon this darkness, and not only might it be dissolved in terms of the current potentially evil form which it contains, but it can be transmuted. It can be transformed from like this seed that it is in its unintegrated form, in its dormancy, in its ensoiled. I don't know if that's the word, if that's a word. It is a seed in soil, in this dark, moist, cold terrain of winter, the depth of winter, and it's a seed that's just kind of like germinating, and it's buried in this darkness. But if you shine the light of the sun, if you shine the light of awareness, shine the light of love upon this darkness, not only does the darkness itself dissolve, but then a flower comes into bloom. And a flower is this perfect geometric reverential pattern of divinity. Alignment. Pure life. Truth. Love. But the thing about that flower, about this seed that is buried in this soil of shadow and darkness and all of the potentiality of evil which we contain within ourselves. If you do not shine the light of the sun upon it, if you do not shine the light of your awareness upon it, then it's just going to decay and turn into more soil, turn into more darkness, turn into more decay. And it is when we refuse, whether it's out of a state of fear or out of a state of anxiety or out of a state of ignorance, to look into our own shadows and whatever forms they wish to take within ourselves and within the ripples into the macrocosm, however far that macrocosm extends, whether it's communal, whether it's societal, whether it's universal. The form that shadow takes, if we refuse to look at it, to look at it, and to really like peer into its eyes and say, I see you for what you truly are, let us renounce all forms of deceit here, and let us bring out the kernel, the seed, which wishes to bloom into the flower of the truth and the goodness and the alignment that is demanded to be brought back into being in this place where misalignment is so pronounced. Take a moment. There's a loud truck out here. There are two things which in that moment came to mind and heart, which I'm just going to allow to be invited into this transmission. The first is the other night I had a dream. And in this dream, certain shadows from my own macrocosm were presenting themselves, or perhaps they were something external. I'm not entirely sure. But they were very clearly demons with slits in their eyes like serpentine reptilian forces, which were trying to disguise themselves as just regular forms of being. And I recognized, like, you guys are concealing something. You are trying to appear as something that you are not in order to hide something of a death that you contain within yourself, which needs to happen for the continuance of transmutation and purification to go on. And so I felt this. And you could say they were like these demons posing as humans. And I was like, no, I see you. And I invoked the name of Christ. And I said, in the name of Christ, I command you to look at me. In the name of Christ, I command you to look at me. Feel the name of Christ. Feel the name of Jesus Christ. In the name of Jesus Christ, look into my eyes. And they were trying to avoid looking at me. But every time that I named him, they were forced. They were like looking away. And then I name him and they're forced to like look. And the pupils in their eyes went from like the deceitful, they were trying to conceal as this circular pupil, regular human pupil, but then it just like appeared as the slit, which it truly was, these weird reptilian beings. And so I keep naming the name of Christ and I tell them, look at me. In the name of Christ, look at me. And the moment that I truly got to peer into their eyes, into the eyes of these demonic shadows, which in the micro to macro chain are some kind of representation of my potentiality of committing evil in the world, the name of Christ literally dissolved them into death. Like these beings who were in some kind of human form, as soon as I commanded them to look into my eyes in the name of Christ, I saw the slits in their eyes, the reptilian, like the true form of their fallenness, and instantly they died. They just like, their bodies just went gone, no, lifeless. And Christ is the supreme being, is the supreme light, is the supreme embodiment of the divine universal will, which breathed all creation, all goodness into being. It is the supreme, he is the supreme embodiment, representation of the infinite light of awareness, which can be called upon to look into the eyes of the shadow in order to dissolve the shadow and return purely into the goodness of pure, harmonious alignment with the divine. And there are infinite thoughts and feelings that can be shared specifically about Christ, specifically about Christ's ability to dissolve demons and eradicate them. And I will only touch upon one and set this the universality of this question aside for this present moment. I will express in this moment that in this microcosm, in this moment of interpretation, Christ represents, embodies the loving light of awareness in its purest form, shining upon the shadowy depths of inheritances of fallenness, of programs, of misalignments, of sin meaning misstep, missing the alignment. To look into the eyes of the demons with the absolute sovereignty of God in its purest essence. The Son of God, God incarnate in the flesh. Whether you believe in Jesus as the only Savior, or if you believe in Jesus as some literary, metaphorical, symbolic representation, he is God, universal, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, all-knowing, all-powerful, in the flesh, embodied. With that sovereignty, to look into the eyes of the shadow and say, I command you to look at me. And to witness the shadow dissolve upon the sight of this universal loving awareness. Because that death needs to happen for the proliferation of true life in true vivacious alignment with the divine to come back into restorative being. And that ties into the second thing, which I wished to mention, which is that I am speaking about this as an embodied man, as a male, as a embodiment of the masculine polarity. Nevertheless, rooted in the feminine polarity of my heart and this divine wellspring of wisdom which belongs to the earth as well as to God, but deeply embodied somatic intelligence from which this transmission is emerging, notwithstanding a few elements wherein my mind is like, well, are these the right words? Are these the right words? I am a man. And on the other side of the polarity, there are women. And coded into the biological machinations of a woman. I don't like the word machinations. Coded into the biological rhythms, cycles of a woman are the lunar cycles, where a woman sheds her womb. Well, the womb herself sheds a tremendous amount of energies once a month. And this is not just a biological process, this is a deeply psychosomatic, bioenergetic, like spiritual, somatic process, wherein coded into the feminine body is this direct journey into the underworld where shadows dwell. The divine feminine principle invites women once a month into this deeply somatic, felt experience of the entire spectrum of human existence, so that not only can the loving light of awareness be shown upon the shadows, but so that the shadows can also be deeply felt through this luminous, loving awareness of the somatic, with which it seems that women are far more in tune than we on the masculine polarity of things. Not to say that we do not have access to similar or self-same forms of feeling, of somatic awareness, but noting the point that in this world of men and women and of coexisting human beings forming society, the microcosmic embodiments of the divine feminine principle of the goddess, divine mirrors of the goddess, from a very young age, they are initiated through their wombs into the inescapable necessity of facing these shadows within themselves. On behalf of themselves, on behalf of the men in their lives, of the women in their lives, on behalf of their community, on behalf of the collective human race, on behalf of the earth herself, on behalf of the luminaries, on behalf of the universe, on behalf of goddess and God. These things are coded into the essence of woman. So let us hold women, let us hold all embodiments of the divine feminine, including each of our individual hearts, whether masculine or feminine, whether in a male body or a female body. Let us hold these divine feminine forces in absolute reverence. And listen to the guidance which they so naturally and seamlessly offer by way of simple being. Listen to the oracles when they speak. Look into the mirrors of the shadows which they embody on their own behalf, on our behalf, on behalf of the collective and of Goddess and of God. And returning to a more universally applicable mode of perception is listen to the feminine principles within, to the somatic intelligence within yourself, within your body, within your heart, within your breath, within the world, within the earth herself. Listen, tune in, take deep breaths. And feel your way into the shadows which are contained within your body, the places wherein the misalignments might form tensions, might form imbalances, might form pain. Like, take a moment to soften with breath into feeling and follow this divine feminine purity and softness, intelligence, which we all contain within ourselves. In order to find the universal mother within, who can hold those shadows that you contain within yourself, who can witness them lovingly, luminously, and hold them like the divine mother that she is and that you are within yourself. When you come face to face with your shadows, there is an effective energy of commanding them under the authority, the sovereign authority, the supreme authority of Christ to look at me. I command you with this masculine potency to look at me and to gaze into the light of my eyes, into the light of my sovereign soul that should be melted and dissolved into death. But there is also the approach of universal, feminine, loving compassion, the pathos, the eros, of recognizing within the eyes of the demons, within the eyes of your shadows, within the eyes of the darkness. A cry for help like an infant that literally just wants to be held, but is so deluded by his own pain, by her own pain, that it's just causing a ruckus and torment and screaming and kicking and crying, begging simply to be held and loved and purified and nurtured and once again loved, loved, loved. So that if any death needs to happen, then we hold the soil within our hearts, within our arms, within our loving motherly arms, and we nurture that soil so that the flower can feel safe to come into bloom, into the softness of that bloom, into the divine reflective essence of that bloom, and just say, I am here on behalf of Goddess and God as a union of their polarities, transmuting all of the darkness into reverential love. And you are this flower. And you are this love. And when you allow yourself to dive into yourself, and to face and to witness your shadows and your own capacities to deceive yourself and to deceive others and to commit evil upon yourself and to commit evil upon others, then you perform the universal alchemy of transmuting evil itself within yourself and your microcosm, evil itself within the world in its totality, within the macrocosm, and you transmute these evils themselves into goodness and divinity and love. And into the flower of your soul. This seems to me to be the way for this microcosm, and for any microcosm which feels in resonance with the transmission which I have just shared. To end the reign of evil and deceit and ignorance and delusion on this earth and in the universe, in order to inaugurate the Christic resurrection of truth, sovereignty, love, and a world realigned with the goodness, the innate goodness of its universal divine being. I believe that is the transmission. Thank you, and I hope these words in the transmission were helpful and will continue to be helpful. May you be blessed, may you be loved, and may you abound into the abundance which you are.